we need to understand. I don't know. At first, I'll get into investor shoes, and then I'll get into entrepreneur shoes. Now, as an entrepreneur, when I start my business, okay, when started my first business, okay, I quit my well-paid job. Right, every month I didn't have to worry about my salary setting the account. The moment I get into an entrepreneurship, I have no control on the cash flow. I don't know when will I start drawing salary. I take a huge risk because I have to pay my bills. There's no one else who's going to pay my bills. So I take a huge risk. And that's why I want my return to be very, very high, because I'm leaving the comfort and of my cash flow, a comfort of when you start a business, it's you are as good as the peon in your office to the MD in your office. You are doing all the errands. So it's so the I take a huge risk. I live the comfort. I concentrate on building the business. So I want a big return.
Welcome everyone to a yet another Seekho one-on-one session. Seekho is a new intriguing platform for the youth which promotes micro-learning by focusing on upskilling through multiple topics. It is a video-first micro-learning based community. Our platform is driven by some of the credible industry experts and professionals who create meaningful content for our existing and growing 90k plus user base. We have with us today CA Nisha Dhanuka. How are you, Nisha?
I'm doing very well, Anuradh. Thank you so much. How are you doing?
I'm absolutely excited for this session. Having an experienced person like you, a lot to learn today. So yeah, definitely very excited. Guys, to introduce a little about Nisha, she's skilled in business planning, risk management, corporate finance, banking, and coaching. Strong entrepreneurship professional with an MBA focused in finance, CA and CS. Strong business acumen to grow her business from scratch to millions. Passionate about building strong financial acumen in entrepreneurs, especially women entrepreneurs. That's a pretty varied profile, and that's the kind of experience that you want from a person you're looking forward to learn from. So we are definitely very excited, Nisha. And now passing on the stage to you, please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Anirudh. Hello, everyone. My name is Nisha Dhanuka, and I come with around 18 years of experience, both in corporate as well as my entrepreneurship journey. I started my career with ICICI Bank in their corporate banking group. I worked there for a couple of years, and in 2012, the bug of entrepreneurship bit me, and I started my first venture into people development space called C2X. In 2020, I exited that company and I started my second venture called Quinfin Consulting, which I'm working on right now. Quinfin Consulting is into helps small, mid-size, and new startups to incorporate. We manage their accounting, their compliances. We also ensure that the dashboards are given to the entrepreneurs who don't understand finance and accounts, which gives them a deep insight into what's happening in their businesses in terms of revenue and costing. So we work like their extended accounts and finance department, and also a virtual CFO. So that is in nutshell about Quinfin Consulting. As an entrepreneur, I've been into this journey from last 12 years approximately, and it has been a great learning journey. And in my journey, I realized that finance is one thing which all the entrepreneurs should know, irrespective of what background you come from. Because if you're an entrepreneur, you need to know, because ultimately the business we do is only to, ultimately the one of the most important goal is to generate a revenue, generate money, right? Then the other things follow. So it's very important to understand the account, the finances, and that's why I do a lot of sessions on upskilling entrepreneurs, especially women, in that how do you manage your money, or how do you take care of your finances. Yeah, I think that's about me. Thank you so much.
So a second there, I'm officially blown away by the kind of introduction that Nisha has just given us. I mean, that kind of varied experience. You've done a lot in finance, you've done a lot in accounting, you've done a lot in entrepreneurship and building entrepreneurs all around the places that you've been. It is absolutely phenomenal, and my excitement level has gone just 10 times up after hearing
Thank
all
you.
of this. So, Nisha, for the first round that we have today is the rapid fire round. Now, this is a surprise and a fun round. We'll be asking 5 questions to you back to back, and the maximum time for you to answer each question is 5 seconds. So, don't keep us waiting. We all set?
Yeah, I'll try. Yep.
All right. So, let's start the rapid fire round. So, the question one is one hidden talent people don't know about Nisha Dhanuka.
I love to play Scrabble, and I'm a state champion in that.
Oh, so the next one is what is one thing that irritates or bugs you the most?
Um, Lack of flexibility or giving excuses. I just hate it.
So the next one is if you asked to become a neighbor of a famous personality, who would that neighbor be?
Shah Rukh Khan.
Shah Rukh Khan, I love that guy, the King Khan. All right, so the next one is if not a finance expert, what Nisha would be?
A social worker.
Social worker. I work for the Rotary International Club. I love social work.
I
All
work a
right.
lot for blind people. Yep.
Oh, we have done a lot of endeavors there too. Lovely work. So the final question of the rapid fire round, and this is kind of like the signature question of rapid fire, Nisha. This is a question that we ask every thought leader. So that one life lesson you learned and tell every other person about.
Fortune lies in follow up.
Wow, beautiful, beautiful. So, Nisha, that was it for the rapid fire. Now comes another interesting round called swipe left and right. I definitely believe that you have not used Tinder, but you must be aware of this idea. When you like something on Tinder, you swipe that right, and if you do not like something, you swipe that left. The same is the concept here. I'll be throwing 5 terms, and if you're interested in that field, you swipe right. If not, then left. So the first one is traveling.
Right. I swipe
All
right.
right. Swipe right all the way from my side too. The next one is cooking.
Swipe left. I
Totally
hate
left. I love to eat. I don't like to cook at all. All right. So the next one is meditation.
Swipe right.
Swipe right. Swipe right. You're so much like me. All right. The next one is binge watching.
Swipe left. I don't like.
Oh, cool. So the last one of this round is mentorship.
Swipe right. Absolutely believe in it.
Yeah, that your profile totally shows that the kind of entrepreneurs you've built. Definitely, mentorships is a swipe right for you. So that was it for the swipe left and right, Nisha. Now coming to the main Q&A round. Now these are the questions that we've prepared so that we can learn as many insights from your experience that you carry. So the question one is, what is business planning? This is a question that a lot of people ask, but they have no clue about. Why is it important to strategize before actually executing something?
Okay. So I think even before answering that question, Anirudh, business planning. So before I take one step back, forget about business planning. Why is planning so important? So so there are a lot of people who says that we should, when we think of an entrepreneurship, we should just jump in. So without doing the market research, and we'll see as we go. Yeah, that is one way of doing it, and it's a good approach. There's nothing called right or wrong in entrepreneurship. If it hits, it works. Then you can always say that worked for me. But I believe that planning is very, very important, because there has to be some direction in where you're going. So same concept applies for business planning. Now, when I planned to start my second venture, QuinFin, it was a lot of research that I did before even saying that, okay, I want to get into this business. I had to plan. Now to start a business is not it's not so easy as it sounds. You have to get your, like, whether you want to be incorporated as a private limited company, as an LP, how much amount of funding do you need, what kind of resources do you need office space. All these things you have to plan. I'm not a big supporter of a long-term planning. I don't believe in that. But definitely, when you're starting a business, at least you should look through 2 years. That what would be, how will I, if tomorrow I get my clients, how will I execute the business? So business planning is very, very important. Okay, you can cut it into pieces and then see, does the entire pieces, if I put together, can take me or sail me through for the 2 years. If I'm able to see through my 2 years, I am good to go. Now, if everything goes good, we are good. But you should also prepare that, as an entrepreneur, we need to be mentally very, very optimistic, but then we need to be prepared for the worst. And that's where business planning plays a very, very critical role, that if things don't go the way you have thought about it, what are your plan B? So I feel business planning is very important, and very critical, especially when you're starting a business.
And I couldn't agree more. I mean, if you do not have any plan, then at the end of the result, how do you even know that the results that I've achieved are
Yes.
good or not? You do not have any measure or
Absolutely.
yardstick to compare it
Absolutely.
with. I totally agree
Absolutely.
with everything you said.
Yeah.
Right, Nita. So the next one is, what are a few of the common mistakes that companies make in handling their finances? Some of the common errors that you frequently see.
Okay, so I think the one thing that I see a lot of entrepreneurs when they start the business, okay, they feel that they want to be jack of all trades and master of all. So that is a bad strategy. When you start a business, you are start for selling a particular product or services which you are good at. So you focus on that. And I see a lot of entrepreneurs, they don't want to spend this, a minuscule amount of 15-20,000. They don't want to outsource their finances. They want to do everything in house. And in so they have to wear different hats. They are doing multiple things, and in that, finance is one area where you can't compromise, or you can't afford to do mistakes, because one slip of compliance, heavy penalty, we all know about it. So I always say that, it's good to know, but you're not an expert. Give the at least outsource your finance and accounts to an expert. Like, there are a lot of people in the market who are doing day in and day out. They are aware about what are the new compliances that are coming, what are the new rules, regulations they are coming, which an entrepreneur cannot, and we can't even expect from that. But to save that small money, they always end up in doing, burning their midnight oil, and also not have a complete hold also into it. So at the end of the day, they're not able to get the sales, the finance is a mess, and when they come towards, it's all mess. So when there's a penalty, then they will come to us, say that, can you please sort out this. So I suggest that this is one of the most common thing. You concentrate on what you're good at. Pay a little bit of amount of money. Don't You can always negotiate that amount, but please outsource the things which are very, very critical for your growth, and especially finance. So that is one common mistake I see in all entrepreneurs.
So they should particularly focus on specialization. And one aphorism
Yeah,
that I remember is
correct.
"Jiska kaam usi ko saaje." So
Exactly.
perfect
Absolutely.
analogy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So the third question is, how important is budget management?
So now, budget and management, if you really see there, those are if you are doing budgeting, okay, you are managing your finances. There is nothing called budget management. So how do we look at it? See, why now, when you're running a business, forget about any business, any level, all the business need to budget. Now, what is this budgeting? The very concept of budgeting, saying that, okay, if I have to do this much of expenses, okay, if this is my turnover, suppose 100 is my turnover, then what are the certain expenses that I need to do to earn that revenue of 100 rupees? Now, if I earn more than 100 rupees, obviously my expenses may vary. But if I earn less than 90 rupees, should my expenses also fall or go as per in proportion to my, my sales or revenues? So budgeting becomes very important when you only have a limited resources. Okay, you only have this much of money, irrespective of whatever level. Even Amani, he will always do the budgeting, because everybody, all entrepreneurs only have limited resources. Now, in that limited resources, how much you are able to get the turnover out of it, or what is the return on investment, or how much you're able to churn, is very, very important. And that's where budgeting plays very, very critical role. That, if I budgeted to have 100 rupees sales, was I able to achieve 100 rupees? Against that 100 rupees, I budgeted that I'm going to spend only 50 rupees on labor, or on marketing expenses only 20, or on my debt expenses, suppose interest and all, 5 rupees. Was I able to meet those, or I did I over budgeted, or did I under budgeted? So now, budgeting also, over a period of time, you will get more accurate numbers. But initially, when you start, it's only a hunch, or a small kind of, what do you say, assumption basis budgeting we do, saying that, okay, basis this, as per this industry standard, these are the certain expenses that I need to occur to achieve my goal, or achieve my numbers. So budgeting becomes very important. And at the end of the year, when you're actually closing the books, as you rightly said, that, if I have written something, I can always compare it with what I thought and what it is in reality. And then, of course, for future, my budgeting would be more and more appropriate and more realistic. Yep. Yeah, I think, yeah, I'm done with my answer.
All right. So basically, when it comes to planning, the first question that we had in this particular round, planning, the planning about the costs and the expenses is what budgeting is. And I
Yes,
definitely agree
absolutely.
that there has to be a proper account of whatever is going out of the
Absolutely.
company and whatever is coming in. Beautifully explained, Nisha. So the next one is, how do you help in settling new business? What are the initial steps to start a company?
So the very first question I always ask a startup when they come to us for consulting is that, do you want to get funded? Okay, do you plan to make your business so big that you want investors to come in, or do you want to do a traditional business where you want to grow very very organically, slowly, with the and be at mental peace. So depending on that, if the startup or the entrepreneur is, I want, they are into the very concept that they want to get into is it a high growth business and they want to get investors in, we say go for we help them decide type of organization, type of entity. And any investor always invest into private limited company. They will not like to invest in any other form of entities like LLP or partnership or sole proprietorship, because the compliances are very less there. The moment it's a private limited company, the investors know that the company is compliant as per the statutory, as per the company law, and they always invest in these companies because they can buy shares from there, right? So we help them decide on what are the type of entity that you want to incorporate. Then we tell them that how do you plan. Now there are a lot of incorporation itself has lot of steps attached to it. We help them decide the name of the company. We help them decide that if you are a number of shareholders, how do you allocate the shares. Okay, and if you want to go in further again to raise funds, how what are the different ways you can raise funds, how can you issue new shares. So we help them understand the entire gamut of things before incorporation. So when they incorporate, and we also help them understand what are the different compliances they will have to comply with once they are incorporated as a private limited company or as a LLP. Both have compliances attached to it. So we give them a overview about all these things. Let them take an informed decision, because once you incorporate, whether as an LLP or a private limited company, there's no looking back. Then you just work on that model to grow your company. So we handle companies and they are always confused. Most of them, they are not sure about, they feel LLP is less hassle, less expensive, less compliant, so let's go with LLP. But the very concept that LLP you can only get partners, not shareholders, so that is also a kind of insights that they get, and then they decide. So, and if the company is the traditional business, we say you can go as an LLP or a sole proprietorship, grow slowly, and then we can, when you become a little big, then we'll think about private limited company. So no need to incur expenses and compliances. When you only want to go as a single founder, go as a sole proprietorship.
Wow, in such a brief manner, you have given the description of all types of businesses, their pros and cons. I definitely believe that this one is going to help thousands of people who are going to start up a new venture. Thanks a lot, Nisha. So the next one is that we have heard this term a lot, risk to return ratio. I would love to learn from you that for the startups, what is the appropriate amount of risk to return ratio for trying to penetrate new markets, basically?
Okay, I think that is one question which is I would always like my risk to be lowest or a return to be the highest. That's the way everybody wants to earn. But in fact, the contrary is the truth, that higher the risk, higher the return. So now we need to understand. I don't know. First, I'll get into investor shoes, and then I'll get into entrepreneur shoes. Now, as an entrepreneur, when I start my business, okay, when started my first business, okay, I quit my well-paid job. Right, every month I didn't have to worry about my salary setting the account. The moment I get into an entrepreneurship, I have no control on the cash flow. I don't know when will I start drawing salary. I take a huge risk because I have to pay my bills. There's no one else who's going to pay my bills. So I take a huge risk. And that's why I want my return to be very, very high. Because I'm leaving the comfort and of my cash flow, a comfort of, when you start a business, it's you are as good as the peon in your office to the MD in your office. You are doing all the errands. So it's so I take a huge risk. I live the comfort. I concentrate on building the business. So I want a big return. So definitely, as an entrepreneur, I always like to have a high return. Now if I look from the from the investor point of view, now they will invest into business. Okay, now a traditional business, if they put their money into FD, they'll very easily get 8 to 9%, which is a safe return. They can give money on debt, secured, unsecured. They will easily get 12 to 15% of returns. So if the business is giving only 12 to 15% of return, they are not interested, right? Because they're this much of return they can get from not putting their money in any startup. It's a more secured way of getting the returns. But if they invest into startups, they look at nothing less than 2x, 3x, 5x, 10x, 50x kind of return. And we have seen that some of the investors, if you invest in the right business, you get those kind of returns as well. Because here again, the research says that if you invest in 10 startups, out of that 6 or 7 will die, they won't work. Okay, but if 2 to 3 works, they will compensate for your loss in those 7 startups. So from the entrepreneur point of view, of course, this is my bread and butter, so I would like to make it big. I would like to earn a higher rate of interest, higher returns. But from the investor's point of view, if you're investing in startups, they want nothing less than, as I already told you, it has to be very, very lucrative for them to invest into startups. Otherwise, they won't invest into startups.
So basically, if we were to summarize this, then we have to take a mediocre approach from considering both the points of view, because the investor is again going to invest the money in the entity when he sees that it is safer as well as big risk rewarding. Then what is the trade-off that we have to actually go with?
No, in fact, this is not at all a mediocre. It is completely extreme. Okay, if I invest in a startup, I'm taking a high risk. The chances of that startup flying is 1 out of 10. I said out of 10 startups, only 7 or 8 will fail. 1 or 2 will work. So I'm taking a huge risk. But if I get the return, my return would be phenomenal. It would be, as I said, it could be 5x, 10x, 50x. I don't know. So there's no mediocre way. If I invest in a startup, I invested recently in a startup, a certain amount of funds. I know if the startup don't fly, I lose my entire amount of money. But if it flies, then it's going to give nothing less than, I'm not here to play in startup industry for 10, 20, 15, 50%. It has to be, 100% or 200 or 300% returns.
Wonderful. All right. So the sixth one of this round is, what are the benefits of outsourcing financial activities for small scale business? We just discussed that jiska kaam usi ko saache, that the outsourcing has to be done. A person does not have to be a jack of all trades or a master of none. So particularly for small scale industries, what are the benefits of outsourcing the financing activities?
Okay, so if there are a number of things, but the top 3 things that I always harp on, that why you should give it to the people. Now, first of all, finance sounds very easy, but you actually sit down and understand that. It's very easy for an entrepreneur to drive the revenues. Okay, drive the revenue means that they are expert in selling the good or product or services that they're entering into. So that is their core expertise, and we don't want to even get into that. Okay, but there are costs attached to it. Now they don't have an understanding about what are the direct costs, what are indirect costs, what are the opportunity costs, what are sunk costs, what are variable costs. So for them, they only directly relate, okay, if I have to sell this particular mobile, I am hiring, these are the raw materials, labor, this is my cost. No, there are other costs attached to it. So sometimes they feel that they are making money, but actually they are not making money. Second is, like, in India, we have lot of compliances to cater to. If you're a private limited company or an LLP, you have to do quarterly return, monthly return, irrespective of your level of revenues. Right now, to expect, and then there are changes in the dates, there are certain updates that keeps coming. How do we expect the entrepreneur who has left everything to drive the business to be updated about that? Now, if they miss on those compliances, there's a huge penalty that goes into it. Right now, for an accountant, debit and credit is very simple to understand. But the same thing, if you go and ask an engineer, it's not so easy for him. Right? So why do you want to learn things which you never learned? Okay, for the understanding point of view, you can do. But suppose you do a wrong entry in Tally, or your wrong entry in the accounting software that you're using, you're making your entire financials go for a toss. So we say that, you always, so when we work with any client, we always empower them by, we always have a monthly review with them saying that, okay, this is your financials, these are the revenue, the cost numbers, these are your debtors, creditors. So we give them insights, as you should concentrate, you're collecting more money, or your creditors you have to pay. So we give them all those insights, right, which they won't have the time to prepare those kind of insights into. So I feel it's very important, especially when they're starting, to have somebody handhold them in terms of the finance and account. And it's very important because when an investor comes in, they also check how financially clean you are, how compliant you are, who is maintaining your accounts. So there's no what do you say, there's not an iota of risk of saying that, okay, you have manipulated your account when it is managed by a third person. So I think those due diligence, those compliance, those maintaining the the right book of accounts, giving them insights, these are the things we bring on table, which you can't expect from a entrepreneur, if especially if it doesn't come from finance industry.
So to account for both the operational and legal sorts of risk, you need to have a person who is expert at
Absolutely,
finance.
absolutely. In fact, sometimes it so happens that a person says, no, it's very easy to go and file GST, but sometimes when you do a mistake, the penalty that you need to pay is as good as a 1 month fees of a outsourced company. So we always say you have to look at the bigger picture. Are you here to make 25,000, or are you here to make 2.5 lakhs per month? So either you save on this and lose out on your 2.5 lakhs, or you focus on your 2.5 lakhs, pay this 25,000. So I'm just giving a number. That's not the price we charge. We are a little expensive.
Yeah, you save your expenses on the penalties that are charged, as well as you save your reputation, I believe. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we talked about like budgeting a while ago. Now there is another interesting term that is at my screen, that is cash flow management. I would love to know that what is cash flow management and how it is important for an SME, in your words.
Okay. So I think it's a very, very valid question. First of all, the very concept of cash flow, if you ask anyone, so what is the cash flow that you get in your business? And they will say, my sales. That's a common answer. And what's the cash outflow? They will say, I pay my labor, salary, raw materials. That's a common thing. So the very basic thing, that cash inflow means any money coming into your business. The first thing, of course, you have to get money from sales. Second, if you take a loan from a bank, money still comes in, right? If you've done some investment, you get some interest or return. That is also cash inflow. And cash outflow is not only salary or the raw material. If you are paying interest on some loan that you have taken, that is also cash outflow, right? You have to pay for electricity. You have to pay for any money that is going out of your bank account is cash outflow. So in totality, when we look, we always, of course, break it into operating activities, financial activities. We can always do that breakup. But if in totality, any money that is coming is cash inflow, any money that is going out is cash outflow. Now, it's very important for businesses to be cash positive. Okay. Now, sometime when we ask any entrepreneur that, how is your business doing? They will say, yeah, we are doing great. My profit margins, the margins that I operate at PAT level, profit after tax, is around 30%. Okay, so they have done a sales of 100 rupees, they are making 30 rupees profit, which is very, very good. And I ask them, okay, so but I see a challenge in your bank account that you're still raising money. So what is your working capital cycle? How do you collect the money? So they say, no, we are new in the market, so I'm collecting money from my customers after 60 days, but I'm paying for my raw material in 30 days, right? So there's a mismatch, that to make the payment in 30 days, I get the money in 60 days, right? And then so I said, and sometimes these people, because they are new, they will, the customers won't pay for 90 days, 120 days also. So I say, this is not a good business. Your profit is only in the books. Until unless money hits your account, hits your bank account, you are not doing good business. Okay, not sales is a good thing, but sales should convert into cash. So cash flow management is very, very important. And I say in that case that, they say that, if I don't pay my raw material guy within 30 days, he will think that I'm not a good guy to work with. I said, no, you do a commitment that I'm going to pay in 60 days, and you pay on 59th day. If you don't pay on 60 days, then you're a bad guy, right? Everybody understand, and you have to make them explain that my customers are paying only 60 days. So it should be other way around, that you get money from your customers in 30 days, you pay in 60 days. And that's why cash flow management is so very important, which they lack this kind of understanding, and they're always they are like, just to build a good relationship, they defer the cash payment. And I always say that if you don't follow up for your money, you are the last vendor to be paid by your client. So you always need to, and it's not nagging, it's only asking the money that you deserve after delivering a product or services. So cash flow management is very, very important, very critical. And if you want to grow and be sustainable in the market, you need to manage your cash flow.
Uh, Basically, I've also heard this, that the investors at the end of the day look at the cash position, the economic
Correct.
profit, and not just the accounting profit that exists in the book solely.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct.
wonderfully
Correct.
explained. All right. So the next one is, how does a company calculate its valuation? Now, this is a process that seems to be very cumbersome. Now, is it something that actually gives an accurate measure of company standing, or is it something that just is abstruse or abstract? What do you think?
Okay. So valuation is a number game, we say. It's something. Of course, there are certain financial parameters. There are various valuation methods that experts use to value a company. Sometime in very, very simple term, if I have to explain that, what are my sales today? So sometimes my company is valued on the basis of the turnover that I have done in the last 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, or on the profits that I've generated. Okay, so net profit, or at the turnover level. And we talk discounted cash flow also is a very, very common method of valuing a company. And it's all about the multiple that, what is my current turnover? It's 5x, 10x, 20x. And it's all about the assumption and the growth path that you show to your investors. So it's like a negotiation game that, okay, I feel that my company is worth 10 crores today, even though I'm just doing a business of 10 lakhs, but I see that potential. But can I go and convince my investors that, do you also see the value of my company 10 CR the way I see it? So the investors will always say, no, I don't see you. I think your assumptions or the factors that you've taken are very, very aggressive. And he may not agree, but it all depends on the confidence and the numbers that you have put on the Excel sheet. So valuation, I personally feel is more about assumptions, a number game, and the confidence that the entrepreneur bring on table. There are so many ways of getting the valuation done, and there are experts in the market who does that. So I don't want to comment more on it, because I have seen companies who have not even started operations. They are valuing their company nothing less than 5 CR, 10 CR. And I have seen companies who are doing good business. They also, when it comes to valuation, they just go 5x, 6x, which is not very great. So I don't understand this game, because there are loss-making companies which are getting billions infusion of cash flow on basis of what valuation. I just don't understand this game. I believe in those businesses which are more sustainable. Your business should be good enough to manage your operating expenses. Otherwise, it's not good business. So my focus is always on those businesses which can create cash flow, who can run their show on the basis of the cash flow the business generates. So unless you really want to go big and you really need capital funding, so not for running the operations. So that is my take on valuation. I don't want to name any company, but recently what we have been seeing, a lot of IPOs coming, and a lot of startups which were funded are getting into the secondary market. So it's very difficult to understand those things. But yeah, it's a wait and watch game. Let's see what happens.
So from what I infer, it is really hard to say that even two people will give the same valuation for a company, of course, because they'll have their own perceptions and their own assumptions. Totally everything according to their own perspectives. All right.
Yes, yeah. There are a lot of assumptions. There are a lot of background work goes before we even give a valuation of the company. So it's a detailed financials that are prepared for 5 years, 10 years. Then only the company is valued. But it is all on the assumption.
Right. All right. So the ninth question is, that one advice that you would love to give young aspirants who are wanting to pursue their career in the finance industry, the kind of path that you have traversed. If someone is, trying to walk on the same lines, then what would be the right thing for them to do? What would be your advice?
For finance or for entrepreneurship? I missed that
For
point.
finance,
For
people
finance.
who are trying to get into finance. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think one is that you should be in love with numbers. Numbers should not scare you, because if it's in finance, You have to deal with numbers. Second, I think you should be more analytical and more patient, because when you're dealing with numbers, and uh, you need to analyze, because numbers per se gives you no information, but when you actually crunch it, when you try to see behind the numbers, there are a lot of information that you get. So you should have that analytical bent of mind. There's a lot of when you want to get into finance industry. So one is the finance side, just sitting on the table and doing it. The other part is selling the financial products. So there also you should have a flair of understanding the finance. So I think this is one sector which will never go out of fashion. Every company ultimately is about making money. You have to generate profits. So even if it's selling the financial products, you need to understand. So it's like finance is such a big domain. If you really see, there are like hundreds of different kind of varieties of jobs that you can get into finance. You just need to see what is your area of interest. It's not that you always have to sit and do finance and accounts. I am a chartered accountant as a CS. Honestly speaking, I don't sit and do accounting entries. My portfolio is more to get the clients, but how will I get the clients? Until unless I understand that, what are the things that they need for their companies. Do I understand that, when we talk about compliances, what are the compliances they have to cater to, right? So I have to have the understanding, and and when I'm doing it, I should enjoy it. One is that I'm just forced to do it, the other is I'm enjoy it. If you enjoy it, you should definitely get into finance. Otherwise, not for the sake that finance is one industry which looks very, I won't use the word glamour, but it looks very very what's the word, I'm just losing the word. It looks very stylish that I am a finance professional, I want to be an investment banker, but do you really enjoy it? So if you enjoy it, you should get into it. If you don't even think about it. There are ample and variety of jobs that you can do apart from being into finance industry.
So don't do it for the sake of grandiose, do it for the sake of your
Yeah,
interests, is the
yeah.
first advice.
Absolutely. In fact, I will share a small, brief story about me. When I was doing my MBA, and I was one of those top. Academically, I've been a good student. So, those 10 CGPA types. And when a bank came into our campus for recruitment, and they said they're giving treasury, and treasury was like very, very glamorized word. I said I want to go for it. I cracked the interview, and when I joined, and I realized that this is something that doesn't interest me at all, and I ended up quitting the job within 3 months, and I took 1 to 2 months break to decide that do I really want to be finance, being MBA finance or CSCS. So sometimes don't go by these jargons. Go and see what is the actual work that you need to do. That gives you a lot of insights.
All right, quite enlightening. So the last question of this round, the Seco signature question. Now, this is a question that again, like we had one for the rapid fire. Now, this is one for the Q&A round. That is something that we ask every thought leader. So that advice for students or young professionals based on your journey so far on why learning every day is so important. The entire idea of Seco is that we should have that thing for learning. We should have that hunger or thirst for learning. So why do you believe that learning is very important for every day, for even people who are so experienced, for them even too?
Yeah. So I think there are two times you die in your life. One is when you actually die. Second time when you stop learning. So we are living in a very VUCA world where everything is very volatile, and there are so much of developments that's happening every day, irrespective of the industry. Now I'm a chartered accountant. I cleared my CA long, long back, right? Now the industry itself is evolving. We have right now so much things happening in fintech industry. Now I can't say that because I've done my qualification, I'm settled, I don't want to learn this, right? I recently did my insolvency professional. In fact, people around me say that, are you like really out of your mind? You really want to sit and study and give exams? I'm going to soon write my valuation exam. I want to become a certified valuer. So this is one thing I would say, that from your mind, always take out that there's always something to learn. There is someone who knows something which you don't know, but that will only happen when you have that open mindset that I know everything doesn't work in today's world. In fact, sometimes you tend to learn something from a child as well, and especially when you're into working professional, learning is the only way you can ensure that you're growing. You stop learning. The moment you have that thing that I know it all, you are gone. You are dead. You are like that water which will just, there's no. It has to be a continuous journey. You have to keep flowing. So I always tell these youngsters that, come out of that mindset that, I've done it. Qualification is one thing, academics is one thing, but the real life, when you get into actual corporate world, it's a different world altogether, and that's where you learn the most. So the mindset has to be like that. I'm open to learn, and that's where the things will just change for you.
There are people who are serving as paradigms of things that you have said. I mean, just look at Bill Gates. He reads 30 books every year. So people as accomplished as that are still learning, then who are we to stop learning? Completely agree
Absolutely,
with it.
absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
Your words were very crisp and your answers were as enlightening and as inspirational as they could be. We thank you very much, Nisha, for this beautiful time that you've given to us. It's really wonderful, and I do believe with certainty that this is going to help thousands of people out there who are trying to enter into a new venture or maybe trying to enter into the finance professional line or something like that. So thank you so much. I couldn't thank you more. Thank you so much, Nisha. It was
Thanks,
amazing.
Anuradha. I'm glad that, I think you're very nice to say such, elaborate kind words. But yeah, I hope I added some value. And thank you so much for having me on Seco.